Well, suddenly, the whole woods went quiet. No chirping, no bats, no bugs, no little croaking of frogs. I doused the burning embers in water and grabbed my friend. I told him we need to leave, now. I told him not to run and to keep his head down. I held onto his arm and began praying under my breath. I didn't see anything. It was when I saw the lights of the house through the trees that I did see a massive shadow blocking the path. We both did, and we took our chances and took off running to the path. Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. Today I have more of your own terrifying tales to read to you today, so let's get into it. I need to start saying this in my videos instead of just putting it in the description, but you can send your stories to me. I would love to read them on here. Just whenever you send them, in the little description bar, just put YouTube so I'll know. Otherwise they may end up on TikTok, but either way they'll get read eventually somewhere. Alright, let's get started with story number 1. This first story takes place in Albania. I myself have no clear recollection of many things that have happened to me as per paranormal, but my sister and family have seen some weird stuff. It happens to me usually when I'm asleep. If you don't mind, I will tell you 2 of my weird encounters. The first one I have recollection of happened in the span of a few years when I was a child, I think 5 to 8 or maybe 9. I dreamt the same dream for many nights with a few minor changes at times, but the subject remained the same. I was always walking up the stairs of my building. I live in the same 8th-floor building as I did then on the 5th floor, if that has anything to do with it. The thing is that it was always dark except the light I had with me, and no matter how many stairs I climbed or descended from, I never would reach the top or the entrance of the building. There was sometimes a light at the very top, but I still couldn't reach it. Another thing that would happen in these dreams is that I would enter the elevator of the building and have a sickening feeling dropped on me. The elevator would close, shake, and the numbers that show you which floor you're going on would show gibberish. Then it would stop, it would open, and it would lead me to the inside of a different building. One similar to mine, but the walls were white and dirty, like it was deserted. But it did have functioning lights. I would explore this yet again, endless rows of stairs. I feel like I've met a person or people there, yet I have no recollection of them at all. This, as I said, continued for a few years, and then it stopped completely. Then last year in winter, I dreamt of going in that elevator again, and I wasn't feeling anything out of the ordinary until then, but just as I stepped foot inside, I felt a sense of nostalgia, and I felt dread from all those years. I braced for what was coming. Now as the elevator began to shake and I arrived at the place the door opens to reveal the 2 men, they both looked like they belonged to stop-motion animation with their 3D doll look and exaggerated features. The first one was tall, skinny to the bone, and pale white skin where you could see a hue of blue from his veins. He was wearing this skin-tight red sparkly dress that was knee-length. His eyes were milky white and he appeared to be blind and frail and quite old from the white thin hair he had. Now the second man was very short and only came to the other man's hip. He was fat, short as I said, with an Italian mafia suit like those in cartoons. He was puffing a big cigar and wearing a hat that blocked his eyes from my vision. Now, I had never seen these men before, but that moment I laid eyes on them, I got the sense of deja vu. I wasn't the only one because they seemed to recognize me as well. Only the tall, frail man spoke, and he said something along the lines of, "It seems we meet again. It's been quite a while since we last saw each other." I remember being scared, but not necessarily from them, but from the situation I was in. I woke up in a cold sweat. Now, the second story has been told to me by my mother and family since I was asleep when it happened. I have a bit of history of sleepwalking and talking. One night, around 2 or 3 years ago, I was sleeping on the sofa in my room and my mom and sister were sleeping on a queen-size bed. My mom told me I was talking quite a lot in my sleep, and I suddenly got up from the bed and was just staring at her and my sister for a while at the foot of their bed. Then I pointed at my mother and said that there were other people in the room and voices too. She told me to get up from the bed because I was going to go lay down in it. My mom didn't agree at first because she was worried I was going to harm my sleeping sister when I was laying next to her, but I insisted. She let me lay down. Now the most scary part is that she was watching me as I slept, to watch to see if I would harm my sister, but I had looked at her and told her to stop looking at me and to go to sleep. My voice was commanding. She then went to sleep on the sofa where I was before, but understandably very worried. The next morning everything was fine, but it was strange. Now, for a bit of context, when I was a baby, every time my mom would look in my crib, I would start crying. This was only at night, so she thought this time it was because of her, but I'm not sure. My sister has also seen entities like the black dog standing at the foot of her bed and a witch-like woman hovering over my sleeping form. I'd like to hear your thoughts on these instances, and I do apologize for writing so much, but it's difficult to put it all in a few sentences. I don't even know. I am not very well versed in dreams. But hopefully someone that sees this will be. I really don't know any advice or information I could give. That's wild though. I Do you guys have anything to add? All right, let's get on to story number 2, and this one has pictures that I will add at the end of the story. I decided I'd like to share what happened to me when I was 17. So there's a cemetery about 20 minutes north of my town of Fort Collins, Colorado. I've been going there since I was very young, and there are lots of local legends about how it's haunted and people have had things happen to them there. I'm going to attach photos and explain them at the end, but first I would like to share the story. So growing up, it was a local legend that this cemetery is haunted. It's from the 1800s, it's the oldest cemetery in my county, and I used to go there when I would skip school on Halloween and in the middle of the night. I've been dating a man who was not from my town and had never been, so one night I decided that we should go check it out a few days after my 16th birthday. So we go there, and it's a straight shot back, and I'm explaining about all of the children and infants that have been buried there over the years, and also surviving family members that have also been buried there. So we're walking back. It had rained earlier that day, and it was very quiet outside. There was no wind. We get back, and I'm explaining the little kind of tower grave that's back there, talking about how old it is, and just kind of explaining what the cemetery is to the people of my county. I look over, and I see that there's like a bush, because right behind the cemetery, there's a barn that has a light on. It was very dark, and it's kind of in the county of the Rocky Mountains, so it's dark anyways, but that kind of helps you see, especially when you're walking through the cemetery. I look next to this bush, and there is a dark entity, like pitch black with spikes. It's more of a general form, but it kind of looked like a big black ball, so I turned to him. I said, "We need to leave, right now," and he asked me if I saw something, but I didn't want to scare him. I'm generally used to things like this, because as you said in one of your videos, I also believe that something follows me. I think that it's a manifestation of trauma. This was something completely different, and it felt completely different, so we start walking back off the trail, and every single time that I look back, this thing is in a different spot than it was. We're walking on the trail, and we get to the point where the sign-in sheet is, and that's the second entrance. Then you walk down a dirt trail next to the creek to get to the entrance, to the street. As we get to the sign-in sheet and to the second entrance, I look back one more time. And when I look back, this thing is right 2 feet away from us, and I can't see past it. There's a light at the sign-in sheet as well, so I tell him to run, and we start running. We're running down this dirt trail, and in one of the pictures that I'm sending you, the tree on that dirt path is exactly where I fell. It was muddy and dark. The wind picked up, and I mean howling winds. I felt this maliciousness, this disgusting hatred, and I knew we needed to get out of there. I ran to the car that was across the street and the whole way home because he was from a different town. It was about 40 minutes. His mother's a spiritual woman. She's a healer, and she's very big on energies. As soon as we walked in her house, she said, "I don't know what you just brought into this house, but you need to get it outside." After we got saged, we explained to her what had just happened to us, and she said she knew it. She knew something happened. Neither of us have gone back there since. We broke up shortly after this, but I refuse to go back, and I will persuade anyone to not go there as well. I love your content. I appreciate you speaking on things that not a lot of people are comfortable talking about themselves. Here are the pictures that will make sense with my story. Thank you for providing me a space to talk about my experience, and I hope maybe you could share it with others. All right, let's look at the pictures. The first picture, the bushes in the back, is where I saw this thing. It's the back layout of the cemetery in one straight line. I saw the thing by the tall monument. The second picture is when I was noticing it was following us. Not my pictures, but to give you an idea of the layout. Third pic is a child's grave. Lots of infants and children are buried here, as seen in the white picket fence from the first picture. The fourth picture is the tree right about where I fell. This is also where I felt I was being chased. Fifth picture is another protected grave. All right, let's get to story number 3. This started when I was in kindergarten and lasted well into young teen years. I want to preface this by saying I was checked out for any mental or physical illnesses that could have caused my experiences, with no medical results or explanations. This might be a little long, sorry in advance, but this is too crazy not to share it with you. It all started with me hearing my name in my dad's voice. I'd be at school or at home while he was working and hear him whisper my name in a stern voice like parents do when they're upset with you but don't want to make a scene. It happened multiple times a day, and I'd always turn towards it. I would wonder where he was or why he was at school early to pick me up, but he's never actually been there. I don't follow the voice, but I acknowledge it, so maybe that was enough. It's definitely enough, unfortunately. Things escalated quickly. Instead of just happening at school, they were happening at home alone, and I heard it right in my room, while with friends, at their homes, anywhere. It didn't just say my name anymore. It called me to come to it. One time I did. By that time, I was in middle school. I went outside where I'd heard it, assuming my dad was still out changing oil in the car and needed help. He wasn't. He'd already gone and left for Walmart. Something felt heavy outside, and I realized Dad wasn't there. Oppressive, like I needed my inhaler even though my allergies weren't even bad. After that, I began to see a man. The first time I was cleaning my cat's litter box, and I looked up, and clear as I would have seen you, I saw a tall older man just a few feet away. He had pale skin, dark eyes, and hair. He was wearing a white shirt, black trench coat, and a wide-brimmed black hat. He looked to be dressed for a semi-casual event, maybe a funeral. He was watching me. I called for my mom, and as soon as I looked back, he was gone. I began to see him everywhere. School, friends' houses, on the side of the road when we were driving, in my closet. He never spoke, he just stared. It got worse when we moved. I don't think he liked that we moved. He began throwing things, sometimes at me. Once a friend while she was over, he locked me out of my room while that same friend was over, and we couldn't use the key, pick the lock, or pry it open. But as soon as I said out loud to let us in or I would go get an exorcist, it opened immediately. At night, the appearance in my closet turned from this man into what I can only describe as a demonic figure. Red eyes, distorted face, black robes, inhumanly tall, a grated voice, and almost sounded like two people spoke at once. I didn't sleep well in that room. He only appeared that way while in my closet, though, so perhaps two entities. I was in 7th grade at the time. I began to get into witchcraft around this time to learn how to protect myself, as holy water, prayer, and salt weren't doing anything. Wording seemed to at least keep it at bay and unable to throw things any longer, but it took a few good months to start working. After 7th grade, I moved again, and again he did not like this. As we moved out, a pipe burst in the basement where my room had been. Almost everything I owned was destroyed. At my new town, I was followed everywhere. I wasn't being harmed. My wording seemed to work at least that much. I begged my mom for help, which is when we went to the doctors to check that out, but when we turned up we had no answers. She took me to a psychic. She saw me a couple of times and we did a joint ritual with candles and crystals and chanting. She did a whole cleansing on my soul too. The psychic then told me to repeat some words that I no longer remember whenever I saw this man. I don't know what exactly she did, but it worked. I saw him a total of 3 to 4 times after that before I stopped seeing him or hearing him. I was about 15 by the time he finally left for good. He followed me for almost a decade. Thanks for reading my stories. P.S. If all of this matters, it happened in central Wisconsin, multiple counties. Alright, let's read our final story. Something in the woods has been trying to get me. That is a terrifying start to this. Backstory, my boyfriend lives in a part of town that is mostly woods. Years ago, before I knew him, I lived up the road from his house. We used to play airsoft in the woods, and we used to leave before sunset. I never understood why until one night we decided to stay out later. The sun had set, and one by one everyone left. One friend and I decided to hang back and make sure the fire went out completely before heading back to our house, which was only 3 to 5 minutes away. Well, suddenly, the whole woods went quiet. No chirping, no bats, no bugs, no little croaking of frogs. I doused the burning embers in water and grabbed my friend. I told him we need to leave, now. I told him not to run and to keep his head down. I held onto his arm and began praying under my breath. I didn't see anything. It was when I saw the lights of the house through the trees that I did see a massive shadow blocking the path. We both did, and we took our chances and took off running to the path. This thing didn't chase us once we got to the road. It stood at the tree line. He yelled at me and told me this is why we shouldn't have stayed. We never again stayed after sunset, and we found a new place to play airsoft. It's been 15 years since that happened. A few days before Halloween, I had visited my boyfriend. We always saw strange things outside, and on a security camera across the street, there was a dark area where the woods start. He said he would see things in there all the time. Because of this and my smoking habit, I always have an escort to sit outside with me. This one night, it was cold, and I told everyone to sit inside while I had a cigarette. I stood out in front of the house petting the neighborhood cat and scrolling through TikTok when the cat puffed up. He stared into the dark void. I noticed I heard nothing. It was dead quiet. I froze. I saw a large black mass again and felt pure fear. Both me and the cat took off. I ran inside, I slammed the door and began crying, telling everyone what happened. My boyfriend comforted me and told me to not go out there anymore. My friends and I left later on, and on the car ride back to my friend's house, we saw something crawling out of the woods. It was black, low to the ground. There were no eyes glowing. It made all of us uncomfortable, and we prayed. Hallows Eve came, and I decided to stay with my boyfriend to celebrate. We saw some strange blue orbs outside, and he told me to stay in. Nothing else strange happened for the rest of that night. We went to bed early, and I woke up in the middle of the night to find the cats acting strangely, cowering at the corner of the room and trying to get out. They suddenly became quiet and ran into their hiding spot on the ceiling. I heard something strange from outside. It sounded like an owl, kind of far away, but there was something off. It sounded sort of like an owl hooting, but playing on a loop. It never changed pitch. It was a steady hoot, with a brief, unchanging pause before it looped again. I didn't hear anything outside. No noises, no bats, no bugs, no frogs. I thought I was freaking out and had to go back to sleep. The owl got closer. The hooting got louder, and I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. I rolled to face my boyfriend for comfort, and then I heard large, heavy footsteps. The owl sounded like it was in the front yard, and the footsteps came towards our window on the side of the house. I shook my boyfriend awake and pointed towards the window. We couldn't see it from where we were laying, but he heard the footsteps too. This thing pushed against the side of the house. The siding creaked loudly, so whatever it was huge. Finally, it came to the window, and we could hear this loud, ragged breathing. It pressed against the screen, almost like it was trying to get in. It sounded like it was about to pop out any second, but it stopped and began walking away. My boyfriend grabbed something to defend us and stared at the security cameras, seeing if he could see anything. But there was nothing, and the hooting sounded further and further away until it stopped. I didn't sleep at all for the rest of that night, but I feel like whatever this thing was, it wants me. I've seen it a few more times since then, and it seems to get closer and more aggressive. Well, that was a terrifying one to leave on. I'm sorry. And yeah, that's all I got for today.